As Your Honor is aware, on the prosecution of these conspiracy cases, it's often the case that more and more information becomes available to the state as we prosecute the case, as we talk to more witnesses and talk to, in some cases, more co-defendants and cooperating witnesses. That's been the case in the prosecution of Jemarcus Johnson. As we told Your Honor,
one thing is that Jemarcus Johnson really snitched on his brother.
The exact participation of Mr. Johnson
when you
in
hear
the conspiracy with regard to
the
murder,
when you hear what the judge and lawyer
Adolph Thornton
was throwing at him, like, man,
known as Dolph,
he basically lost his motherfucking freedom.
Mr. Johnson had Mr. Johnson, Jemarcus Johnson, had no involvement in the homicide before the murder. He had no involvement in the homicide during the murder. His involvement was after the fact. About a week after the murder of Adolph Thornton, his brother, Justin Johnson, who in fact was one of the shooters and one of the killers of Adolph Thornton Jr., came to him and gave him certain property. A car, not the car used in the murder, but nevertheless a car that Mr. Justin Johnson had possession of, and a cell phone. Cell phones of particular importance because it was Justin Johnson's cell phone that he had during the murder and that he had used for some time before. This Mr. Johnson agreed to take possession of the car, and he agreed to take possession of the cell phone. His taking possession of the cell phone and the car aided in Mr. Justin Johnson's continued evasion from authorities and his continued cover-up of the conspiracy. This Mr. Johnson also used the telephone. He used the telephone by his brother Justin would call the telephone, and he'd place the telephone up to another telephone, and they would, in essence, trick Justin Johnson's federal probation officer into believing that Justin Johnson still had his cell phone and was still in Memphis, Tennessee, when in fact he had fled after murdering Adolph Thornton and was not in our community. He also did the same thing where he placed Justin Johnson's cell phone up to another cell phone, and he facilitated a conversation, again, this is over a week after the homicide, between his brother Justin Johnson and the other shooter of Adolph Thornton, Cornelius Smith. Mr. Johnson preserved the telephone and turned it over to authorities. He's spoken with the state, and he's described the content of that conversation and the content of some text messages between Cornelius Smith and Justin Johnson that included Mr. Justin Johnson trying to give money to Cornelius Smith after the killing. Mr. Jemarcus Johnson has given truthful statements to the state with regard to all those acts. Those are 3 acts of accessory after the fact that did aid in the cover-up and this conspiracy. For those reasons, now that we understand those to be the facts of his involvement, now that he's given a truthful statement with regard to these things, he has also identified a picture of his brother Justin Johnson wearing the outfit of one of the shooters of Dolph just directly before the homicide. Now that he's been 100% cooperative and truthful, we're asking Your Honor to accept a guilty plea and recommendation in the case. There's a criminal information that is before Your Honor. It has 3 counts. It's I-2300019. It alleges 3 counts of accessory after the fact for those 3 acts that I just described to the court: taking possession of the car, the cell phone, and then using the cell phone to facilitate those communications. Even though Mr. Johnson is a range 1 offender, he has no criminal history. He's agreeing by this guilty plea, which is open to the court, that he should be sentenced as a range 2 offender. These are E felonies. Range 2 for an E felony carries 2 to 4 years incarceration. He's pleading guilty to all 3 counts of the information, to those 3 E felonies, 2 to 4 years incarceration. He's also agreeing that when Your Honor sentences him, that all 3 of those sentences should be consecutive to each other. So Mr. Johnson is in essence pleading guilty to the court, open to the court, to a sentence that can range between 6 and 12 years when Your Honor sentences Mr. Johnson. The parties are not asking Your Honor to sentence Mr. Johnson presently. We're asking Your Honor to delay the matter, to reset it for sentencing. There are conditions of release pending sentencing that are outlined in a separate
I forgot
sentencing memorandum, which is
title
filed
this.
with this guilty plea.
Yes, sir.
And at a later date, the state will request that Your Honor sentence Mr. Johnson. I've stated the facts at the start of the plea, so I'd ask for the counsel to stipulate to the facts. I'll just very, very briefly, basically 2 or 3 yes or no questions asked to Board Honor Mr. Johnson during the guilty plea.
Yes, sir.
I'll ask Your Honor to accept the plea after that.
Mr. Corman.
And Judge, I believe that would be the evidence the state would present in the case on trial. We do stipulate this fact that they and we're going to ask the court to accept our condition with them.
Mr. Corman, Mr. Hagerman, thank you. Mr. Johnson, Jemarcus Johnson, come around, please, sir. Mr. Johnson, well, come up here where Deputy Chambers is. And once you get to the seal of Shelby County, put your left hand on the Bible and raise your right hand to be sworn, sir. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give this cause to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God? Thank you, sir. Put your hand on the Johnson. I'll see you on the witness stand, please, sir. Counsel, approach, please. Yes, sir. Deputy Chambers. Can you please signature one signature on the document, Mr. Hagerman? Thank you, sir. Jemarcus Johnson, good morning, sir. Mr. Johnson, what's your real name, sir?
Good morning.
You can speak up a little bit louder. The court reporter here has to write down everything that's said. Of course, it needs to speak up a little bit louder. You can take the mask down if you want to. Yes, sir.
Jemarcus Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, what school did you go to, sir? How far did you get in school? Did you finish the 12th grade? Did you ever get a GED, sir? Can you read and write okay, Mr. Johnson? Yes, sir. Mr. Johnson, ask those questions because the law requires me to ask that, okay? A couple of things, Mr. Johnson. You were charged by way of an indictment 2204769 to charge with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. That Class A felony carried anywhere from 15 to 16 years in prison. You're pleading guilty on a superseding information, I-2300019, to charge you with 3 counts of accessory after the fact. That's an E-felony carries up to 6 years in prison. You understand that, sir? Mr. Johnson, you have a right to have this case, this charge submitted to the grand jury. When you enter a guilty plea on this information, accessory after the fact submitted to the grand jury, that case comes to court quicker when you plead on that information. The state will make you the best offer they will ever make on that information, but you're giving up, you're waiving your rights to have this case on an accessory submitted and reviewed by the grand jury. Do you understand that, sir? Is that what you want to do, sir? Yes, sir. For the record, I would find if Mr. Corman in this court has advised Mr. Johnson has a right to have this charge of accessory after the fact reviewed by a grand jury. If the grand jury found probable cause, they would indict him. If they did not find probable cause, they would no deal this charge. They'll find that Mr. Johnson has made that decision to tell us to Glenn knowingly. Mr. Johnson, I'm going to show you a document for the record. This is a petition for waiver trial by jury and request for acceptance of a plea of guilty. On that bottom right-hand corner where it reads dependent, that you sign that, sir. Yes, sir. Mr. Johnson, all of your rights are above your signature, those are your state and your federal constitutional rights. Did your attorney, Mr. Corman, go over those rights with you and explain them to you, sir?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand the rights that you're waiving and giving up today, sir?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Jemarcus Johnson, you heard Mr. Paul Hagerman, the prosecutor, recent statements in court a few minutes ago. When you enter this guilty plea, when you enter this change plea today, you're telling the court that if you had a trial on your case, the state of Tennessee would bring witnesses to court. Those witnesses would testify under oath. They would say things that are similar, that are consistent with what the prosecutor just read. You're telling the court, Mr. Johnson, that if the jury believed those witnesses, that jury would have enough reason to find you guilty of accessory after the fact. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
You have an absolute right to have a trial on your case if you wanted one. You have a right to say, Judge Crawford, not guilty of anything, and I want a trial. Judge, I am demanding a trial. And had this case been tried, you would have a right
I would've took that shit to trial.
and cross-examine those witnesses against you. They would have to bring those folks to court. You can look at it
After the fact,
right there,
how the hell?
on that chair on the witness stand where you're seated, your lawyer, Mr. Corman, will question those folks to see whether or not they are telling the truth. If a jury did not believe those witnesses, or if a jury thought they were lying or mistaken, that jury would find you not guilty and I would dismiss your case. You understand this, sir? Had you gone to trial in this case, Mr. Johnson, you would also have the right to present proof. You can put on witnesses if you wanted to. You can present evidence. You don't have to do anything at a trial ever. If you wanted to, and only if you wanted to, you can take that witness stand and you can testify. You can tell the jury what happened. You can tell the jury your side of the story. If you chose to remain silent and not say a single word, I would tell that jury they cannot hold it against you for any reason at all. You understand that, sir? Yes, sir. Mr. Johnson, had you gone to trial in this case, if you had any witnesses that could help you, your attorney, Mr. Corman, would send them a subpoena and have them come to court and testify for you. If your witnesses didn't show up, or they just flat out refused to come to court, I would have those folks arrested by the sheriff. I would make your witnesses come in. I would make them testify. If I had to, Mr. Johnson, I would put them in jail until your case was tried. You understand that, sir? Had you gone to trial and had a jury found you guilty of anything, you can appeal any conviction the jury gave you. You can appeal any punishment that I gave you. The Court of Criminal Appeals would grant you a new trial or even dismiss your case if that court found mistakes had been made in your trial. If he could not afford an attorney, I would appoint someone for you free of charge to handle your appeal. Do you understand that, sir? Mr. Jemarcus Johnson, when you enter this change of plea, when you enter this guilty plea, you waive, you give up all those rights, you ask this court to find you guilty without a trial. And Mr. Johnson, both sides are recommending that I do not sentence you today, that I delay the execution of these judgments and set this case for a sentencing hearing. And at that sentencing hearing, Mr. Johnson, you'll be sentenced somewhere between 6 and 12 years in a prison. Now, is that the agreement you have to state of Tennessee, sir? Yes, sir. Mr. Johnson, you just want to tell the truth. You understand that, sir? Everything that you say under oath has to be true. If you do not tell the truth, the state could indict you for perjury. That carries up to 12 years in prison. Do you understand that, sir? Before I continue with this guilty plea colloquy, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Hagerman has asked the court's permission to ask you some questions. You waive your right to remain silent when you enter this guilty plea. So listen to the questions that Mr. Hagerman asked of you, sir. Make sure you answer those questions truthfully. You understand that? Yes, sir. Because Mr. Hagerman and Ms. Mond said, Judge Crawford, we don't believe Mr. Jemarcus Johnson is being truthful. They're going to ask the court to vacate this guilty plea. We'll strike this guilty plea. And your case will go back to the same status as it was before this information was filed. You understand that, sir? Yes, any questions, sir? Yes, sir. Mr. Hagerman, you may proceed, sir.
Mr. Johnson, we have talked before, is that correct? Yes, sir. And when we talked, you told me about meeting with your half-brother, Justin. He's your half-brother, is that right? Yes, sir. You told me about meeting with your half-brother, Justin, about a week or so after the murder of Adolph Thornton Jr., is that right? Yes, sir. You told me at that time that he gave you a car, is that right? Yes, sir. You told me at that time he also gave you his cellular telephone, is that correct? Correct. You told me that, or did you tell me that afterwards you used that cellular telephone at his request? Yes, sir. Did you describe to me a scenario in which you would place one phone up to another while Justin was on another phone for the benefit of his parole or probation officer?
He was called to get somebody's number, and I would put my phone down on the bed, and I would put somebody else's phone right there and I'll talk to him.
And you told me about the times that you did that, is that correct? And you also described times not just with the probation or parole officer, but also with an individual known to you as C. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you now know that individual to be Cornelius Smith. Is that right? And you described to me, and you turned this phone over, and in it were text messages with this individual C. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And some of these text messages, some of what you witnessed, was conversation with regard to money that Justin would be getting to C. Is that correct?
He asked for money, yes, sir.
Asked for money.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yeah. He was asking for money for somebody else, from somebody else.
Okay, and that somebody else was referred to as Unc. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this would be money that C asked for from Justin that Justin was going to get from Unc.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct? You described all that to me.
Yes, sir.
You've also looked at some photographs that included one of your half-brother in a particular outfit, and you identified Justin Johnson, your half-brother, in the photograph.
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that one day you may be called to testify in a trial in this matter?
Yes, sir.
Will you tell the truth that time?
Yes, sir.
Have you told the truth with me?
Yes, sir.
No further questions, Judge.
Mr. Hagerman, Mr. Corby, you have any questions of Jemarcus Johnson?
No question, thank you, Judge.
Mr. Jemarcus Johnson, the felonies that you pled guilty to, accessory after the fact is a class E felony. It carries anywhere technically from 1 day to 6 years in prison. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
You have agreed under what's called a hybrid guilty plea, State versus Mailer and Hicks, State versus Hicks, in which you're agreeing to plead outside of your range. You're not a range 2 offender. You understand that? In order to be a range 2 offender, you have to have 2 prior felony convictions. You don't have any felony convictions. You understand that? You can agree to plead outside of your range as long as it's within the range of punishment for that crime, that E felony, as long as you're doing that in your best interest. You understand that? So you're agreeing to plead outside of your range as a multiple range 2 offender. That range 2 sentence will carry anywhere from 2 to 4 years in prison. And you've also agreed that at your sentencing hearing, you will be sentenced to consecutive sentences on these 3 counts. So it's a minimum sentence of 6 years in prison to as much as 12 years in prison. Do you understand that, sir? You understand normally, unless you make that agreement, you cannot be sentenced to more than 2 years in prison. If they run consecutive, you get a total sentence of 6. Do you understand that? Mr. Johnson, once the court sentences you, you lose all of your rights to citizenship. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
If you're sentenced on this case, in order to serve a sentence in prison, you'll be a convicted felon. That felony conviction will be on your record forever. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
If you were sentenced to penitentiary sentence, even placed on probation, would have to render you infamous. For the rest of your life, you lose all of your rights to citizenship. For instance, you lose the right to vote. You cannot vote until you completed that sentence, and the right to vote was restored or given back to you by a judge, a circuit court, or by a certificate from Tennessee Department of Correction. You understand that, sir? As a convicted felon, Mr. Johnson, you can never serve on a trial jury.
This
You can
crazy.
never
This
possess,
after the
you can never
fact.
carry, you can never buy.
Ain't had
you can
nothing to
never
do with the
own
killing.
handguns, firearms.
But after the
rifles,
fact, he knew
shotguns,
about it.
pistols, ammunition, or even bullets. Mr. Johnson, if you had in your possession, in your hands, in your pockets, on a house of
Straight
cards, or
drive
any
out the
other
gate.
place,
Bang!
if you possess
And
any
Cornelius
firearms,
Smith.
if you have one single bullet in your possession, United States prosecution federal court unlawfully possessing a firearm as a convicted felon, you can be sentenced to a federal penitentiary for a long time. If you possess any handgun or firearm, Tennessee can prosecute you for that. That carries up to 30 years in state prison. Do you understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Again, you just want to tell the truth, and everything that you say has to be true. You understand that, sir?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions about the rights that you waived, the guilty plea you entered, or this agreement you have with the state of Tennessee, Mr. Jemarcus Johnson?
Yes, sir.
Have any complaints?
This nigga just
about
waived
anything that
all
Mr.
his
Johnson
rights,
has been in your
man.
lawyer case?
Fuck.
Yes, sir.
How long has Mr. Corman been your lawyer, Mr. Johnson?
8 months.
Did he get 7 months? Did he get discovery for you?
Yes, sir.
Did he let you know what the state would try to prove if you had a trial?
Still might
Did you
do
have anything that you wanted Mr. Corman
6
to
years.
investigate for you?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any complaints at all about
Damn.
anything that Mr. Corman has done or has not done since he's been your lawyer?
Yes, sir.
Do you also understand, Mr. Johnson, that part of this agreement, this memorandum, adopted by the parties, will be filed as a public record with your guilty plea? You're pleading guilty to those 3 counts of that information. You're also agreeing that you be sentenced as a range 2 offender, even though you are in fact only a range 1 offender. You understand that? You also are agreeing that those 3 felony convictions will be served consecutively to each other or one another, making that an effective sentence of minimum of 6 years to as much as 12 years in prison. You've also agreed that The state of Tennessee has not made you any promises, no recommendations to your sentence other than they will detail to the court any cooperation and truthful testimony or statements that you have given that may have aided in the prosecution. As Mr. Hagman just told you, if some of those other cases go to trial, Justin Johnson or Cornelia Smith or Hernandez Govan, if those cases go to trial, the state of Tennessee might actually call you as a witness. You understand that? You understand you waive your right to remain silent, and you could in fact be compelled to testify if those other cases are tried. You'll also be supervised by Shelby County Pretrial Services. They're reporting all parties recommending that you be released on bond in an amount of $25,000. And once you make that bond, Mr. Johnson, you have to report to Shelby County Pretrial Services. They're reporting. We'll file that order with this guilty plea also. You have a curfew from 9 o'clock at night until 5 o'clock in the morning. You have to be at home every day, all day, until your case is disposed of, unless you are working. I want to encourage you to work, and if you are working, you have to provide to pretrial services proof that you are in fact working. Otherwise, from 9 o'clock at night to 5 o'clock in the morning, you have to be at home every day, every night. You understand that? You'll also be in order to enroll in any other programs that pretrial services deem either group programs or individual programs, such as random drug screens. You have to check in with these folks automatically, regular contact with the person who supervises bond, and you also cannot possess a firearm while this case is pending and while sentencing is pending. You understand that, sir? Do you have any questions
That shit
about this
crazy as
that we
hell.
talked about? Mr. Marcus Johnson, I'm going to find for the record the attorney.
I don't see how them niggas do that.
Has represented you satisfactorily. I find that Mr. Corman and this court have explained
Gotta keep a gun on
your
you at
rights
all
to me.
times.
I find that you understand those rights and that you waived it.
Got to,
You've given
man.
up those
That shit
rights
crazy.
intelligently and knowingly. I do find that there is a factual basis. There is a legally sufficient reason for this guilty plea, which has been entered freely and voluntarily. Upon your plea of guilty to information I-23-00019, counts 1, 2, and 3, Class E felonies of accessory after the fact. Mr. Johnson, it is a judgment of this court that you are guilty. The court is going to delay the execution of these judgments and delay a sentence on this case until Mr. Corman, Mr. Vaughn, Mr. Hackman, do you have a recommended date for the next setting on this case?
We're going to get about 45, or somewhere between 45 and about 60 days.
The 60 days is August 10th, Thursday, August 10th, of the day for all warriors.
That's a good thing, Judge.
Yes, sir. Mr. Johnson, we're going to delay the execution of these judgments. We're going to delay the sentencing on this case to the sentencing hearing on August 10th, 2023. Be back in this courtroom at 9 o'clock that morning, unless that date changes, and say the customer's in the case the date does change. But I'll see you back in court.
Man, that shit crazy. He just gave up all his rights. Always get that shit to court after the fact. I ain't had nothing to do with it. Let me know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, man. This shit is crazy.